Hello out there. Just waiting for this to come online.
It's me like 7 times.
Oh yeah, let me get rid of that extra one. We don't need that. Hey guys, welcome to Video Game Design. Um, it is Natalie and Dan coming to you today. And we are going to talk to you guys about some really fun stuff today. We've got a bunch of Unity projects to take a look at. I see David in the chat. Awesome. Good to see you, David. If anybody else is joining in, of course, please let us know you're here. As usual, we will hang out here and chill for a bit before we actually start doing Unity stuff. And one of the joys of today, and hopefully more often, is that we figured out how to have two talking heads in one stream. So welcome, Dan.
Hello.
So we should just have a conversation on here while we're waiting, I guess.
Okay.
And so I'm just curious, how has your week been?
It's been good. What was this? Okay, I don't know what that is. Yeah, it's been a good week. I bought a smoker, so I was barbecuing.
Oh my god, that's amazing! What kind of meat did you make?
A goose.
A goose?
Yeah.
Oh my god, where do you get a goose?
Stu Leonard's.
Okay.
Yeah, I always wanted to have goose. So when I got my nice smoker, I smoked it.
How was it? Was it everything you hoped it would be?
It was pretty good. Especially with the smoker, it's like nice and juicy.
Oh, yes. That's the dream, man. Like, juicy, like, poultry. Because normally it's hard to cook poultry and have it not dry out.
Yeah, I made a chicken too, and that was also super juicy. So.
Oh my gosh, how fun.
Yeah. Although it takes like a super long time to like slow roast it.
Yeah.
It took like 8 hours, I think.
Oh my gosh. Oh, hey, I see Emmy in the chat. Emmy saying, hey, sorry I missed the last couple casts. I've been pretty busy with schoolwork. Emmy, you are always welcome here. And of course, I think we can all sympathize with being busy with schoolwork, right?
Yeah, it should take priority with school, but so that's all right.
Yeah, Dan, you've been pretty busy with school for the past couple weeks too, right?
Yeah, I just finished though, so.
And did you graduate? Like, what's even
real?
What did you do for graduation?
Oh, it didn't happen yet, but it's like a slideshow, which is like the weirdest thing, but they're like, we're doing slideshow graduation.
Is there a slideshow that includes just like your face, like, as one of the people?
Yeah, we get to make our own slides.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited.
It's so weird.
Oh my god, it is such a weird thing. Like, I just want to say, like, I feel for you because, like, graduation is supposed to be this, like, grand celebration. You get to be like, here's your diploma. Here's your slideshow.
I guess I'm gonna mail it. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, it's been really weird for all of us, and especially for people that are students, I think. It's just a huge, huge shift. So, my sympathy to Emmy working on school, online and dealing with all of that. And, we're coming towards the end of the school year here for those who are in high school. And I can only imagine that it's getting even more wild as people figure things out, like slideshows for graduation and all that stuff. So, Emmy, I'm glad to see you here today. David, I don't know why the auto mod caught something that you sent. I'm going to just actually allow that because I have no idea what was going on there.
Oh, yeah, I don't know what that
is. Yeah. Weird. But good to see you as always, David. I'm hoping that we'll see some other members of our team today. I saw Tayshawn on earlier when we were testing out this dual talking head situation. And then always hoping that Naral will pop his head in and tell us that he has internet once again. But our plan today is to talk a little bit about our plan in May of showing you guys how to really work on and improve a game project. So taking a game from a a first playable and or an alpha through to a beta and then a release uh, candidate for publishing on a site like itch.io. So that's been our working project. And last week we talked about some fun stuff. Dan, I think you talked about ray casting on Wednesday, and
Yeah.
yeah, what else did you talk about on that cast?
There was raycasting. There was also like using raycasting to like get distance from something, and then use the percentage of distance to like fade something to the screen. So.
That's right.
Oh, and we talked about. I posted 2 links to 2 different talks for game design, which are both on like how to juice up your game, which hopefully you guys watch because they're really helpful. So.
Yeah, those were really great videos. I feel like I should share those on the Make Room Twitter because it's just so important to think about some of those things, and it makes me realize some of our past game projects that maybe at the time seemed a little bit crappy actually would have had a lot of value if we'd put some of our effort into adding juice to those projects and just making them be a little bit more satisfying to play.
Yeah, just like small little touches, just make it feel better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, for today's cast, we're going to be sort of talking about how to get those kinds of little touches in and making a plan towards, like, kind of what do we want to work on this month. And of course, you guys who are watching us have your games that you were working on in April. And you've also been with us in the past at the in person studio. So we have a big slate of games to work on. And, what I thought I would do today is focus in on some games that I'd love to do further development work on. And Dan and I are going to talk through our general feelings about these games, what we think is strong and what we would maybe suggest as a first step towards actually starting to polish these projects up. And this whole discussion will be to help you guys think about ideas for if you want to work on the games you did in April. And also, if you don't want to work on the games that you did in April, we are explicitly inviting you to work on the games we're about to talk about. So I'm proposing some different projects we could all focus on. And if you're interested in joining in on polishing one of the games we show today, we would love for you to do that. So it's up to you which game project you work on. And soon we'll ask you guys to let us know which one you want to do. So you have your April game that you did for the Alone Together challenge as an option. And then your other option is to join in on one of these past projects that we are going to show today. So start thinking about that if you're watching the cast. Just, what do I want to work on this month? What do I want to polish? And then we'll ask you guys to let us know which game you're going to focus on, especially because when we do know that, when Dan talks about engineering and does his deep dives, he can focus on giving you guys tips for specific games that we know you're working on. I see David saying, what about both? If you want to do more than one, you are invited to do more than one. And of course, David specifically is somebody who I would love to have for a couple of these projects because, David, I think your expertise would be really welcome and necessary in some of the group projects I want to resurrect here, as well as continuing to further 3 Fortnights at Home, which I think is a brilliant horror game. It's a really good game. Dan, what did you think about that? I know you commented a little bit.
I really like it.
Yeah?
I think it's like super impressive.
Yeah. What do you find so impressive about that game? I'm just curious.
The way you have like the phone, like the whole phone setup, I think is really cool and unique with how you manage to put everything together. Then getting everything to spawn in properly. So, like when you order something, it spawns the delivery driver, which then it also calculates distance on your phone. So there's a little progress bar to see where he is, like from where he started to your house, and then also the logic of just him standing there until you take the stuff from him, and him yelling at you the more you wait. Just all those different things, the small touches you added to that, just it's really nice. So I really like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Really great stuff. Just really, really a lot of talent and like thoughtful under the hood programming that contributes to the overall like really, really creepy story of that game.
And one thing I also forgot to mention is you also have that little mini game that's there. So like you didn't have to do that. But that's like a really nice touch that you added.
I love stuff like that. I mean, I am 100% the person that's like, can I find the game within the game? You know? Like, where is that? And David was like, I'm putting that in right away. My kind of game developer. All right. So, again, so just saying, you know, we'd love to see 3 Fortnights at home. Keep evolving and more content in that. And, if you want to join in on one of the ones I'm going to show today, then, you know, please do. So I'm going to show some Unity projects, and Dan and I will sort of reflect on these a little bit. And then we'll pop back here into our beta development shared Google Doc, and, you know, we'll just sort of list down some things that we're thinking that we would maybe work on to start off with if we really dug into taking these games to the next level. All right, so I'm going to kick this off by taking us into the wild and wonderful world of summer 2019, the 2D side-scrolling platformer Elementals, designed by a fantastic game-making team, including David, who is here today. Emmy, if you're watching, you may have heard Elementals be mentioned as one of the summer camp projects from last year, and here it is. So I'm going to just dive right into this, and I'm going to play it in the window here, just so our heads don't block the game. And we will sort of just enjoy the gameplay of Elementals. So yeah, we've got some stars. We've got some monsters. He's throwing coins at me. What are the controls for? Oh, okay. Right, he has a sword. Yeah, we have such a nice. Oop, I took damage. Oh no. Well, I died. Okay, cool. So fun. We all know that I'm kind of bad at these games, though. I do. You know, it's funny. I like precision platformers, but like GameStar and this game I'm always just really terrible at. I don't know what it is. You know, one thing I was really impressed when we made this game was the fact that we did get these custom art in here with, you know, the monsters, and the main character's name in this game is Ethan. I thought that was really impressive. Oh, I should be using the shield. This is also really impressive. We have a you know, this blocks those projectiles when I hold down on a key, which is really cool. And what else did we get in this game, Dan? Do you remember what else we did to beef this one up?
If I'm not mistaken, I think there's 3 levels.
Yeah, that's right.
So just the fact that they did more than just the base 1 level was nice.
Yeah, and this has some really crazy level design in it. I remember there's some, you know, classic sort of David game design. It's really hard to get to those levels, though. I think this is like it looks kind of basic, but then like you get into it and it's really hard. I mean, you know, I'm realizing, you know, I only have 4 lives here, and that projectile takes 1 full heart, so you know it is a pretty challenging game. I also recall that there is some. Yeah, it's nice to know that I can just run past him, and there's really no incentive not to do that. I remember there's some really difficult jumping in this game. Oh my goodness. Alright. Nice audio. People will laugh. We had some people who are actually good at video games playing this in the summer, I remember, and somebody got all the way to the end, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
I forget who.
Yeah, I forget how to get this. Is there a red key?
think the key was up top somewhere.
Pass. There. So Dan, what do you think? If we were gonna polish this up and make it a beta, what do you think would be some of the things we should focus on in Elementals?
Some of the few things I picked up on was, well, just starting from the beginning, the menu. Like, a lot of people don't treat menus as like nothing too crazy, which I guess sort of makes sense because you're playing the game, not the menu. But giving a good first impression is really good. So, like, really good as a player. Like, when you first open a game, it's like, oh, okay, this is really cool.
Yep.
So, one thing I try to do is try to polish the main menu because it's a bit lacking. The next thing I try to do is the hit for like a melee attack. I think it has a bit too little range. Like, you have to be like right up to them to hit them,
Yep.
which sort of makes sense because it's a melee weapon. But then at the same time, it's also like super hard to hit. So I would try to increase the hitbox for that, just because right now it's pretty low. Well, it's pretty small. As for other things, when the bullet collides with the shield, it'd be really cool to have a particle effect, just to indicate to the player that having the shield actually block the projectile.
Yes.
Because it could be a bit confusing to the player. It's like, oh, did I get hit by that, or was it the shield that hit it? And then going along with that, it could also have something happen for when you get hit, such as maybe just flash the player red for a brief moment, or do another particle effect that's different from blocking. Just all these small things would add to it.
Yep. That's a really good point. I mean, this isn't, this reminds me a lot of that one video you showed where the guy showed a super basic 2D thing with the character shooting, and it looked a lot like this game. And then he improved the shooting and added all these like different effects when you click to shoot the gun. And
One key thing about that video that I would like to just bring up again here, in case you didn't watch it or if you did, just to bring it up again, it just making the player feel good as they play the game. A lot of the things he added from that video didn't change the gameplay at all. It just makes the player feel better. Like, when he shot the bullet, he made it shoot 3 out. Like, some of the bullets, like, one of them just like went directly like into the floor pretty much. The other one just flew over the enemy's head. So technically it doesn't really do much, but it just makes the player like feel like, oh, I'm shooting all these bullets, this is really cool. Another thing he did was, when he kills the enemies just lay there on the floor dead. That's another cool thing to add, because I forget the specific word he used for it. I think it was like permanence or something. It's just really nice because as you backtrack through the level, you get to like look at something you did in the world to affect it. So keeping the enemies there on the floor is just like, oh, okay, I did something here. And then as you come back to it, it remembers that you did something. Just the main key point about that is just to make the player feel good, regardless of if it actually has an impact on gameplay. Like, right now we just have the bare essentials of, this is the gameplay, then each of these things do a specific task. So what you could do to improve upon this is just add things that don't necessarily change the gameplay, but just make it feel better.
Yes. Totally agree with that. I think I'm remembering the word impact. Was that the word he used? I was in one of those videos.
Maybe he used it for a different thing.
That was different.
I'm pretty sure though, for what I'm talking about, it was permanence.
Permanence.
It's just leaving something in the world.
Gotcha.
To, like when he shot the bullets out, the shells stayed on the floor.
Yes.
Just whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. So I would add to that, from my perspective, and this is always a really interesting conversation because different people focus on different aspects of games. Part of that comes from your personality, and part of that comes from your education. And my personality and education, specifically, motivates me to kind of I've always been really fixated in this game on the fact that the way the character handles feels really slippery and hard to control to me. And I know that part of it has to do with the fact that the air handling is really wild. Like, in a lot of 2D platformers, when you jump, the actual physics of the character is changed while you're in the air. And typically, what happens is you make the character a lot heavier so that you can't move horizontally in the air as much as you can when you're grounded. And that helps you land jumps a lot more effectively because what we tend to do when we jump is we jump and we just hold down on the arrow in the direction that we want to jump. And however, we don't want the character to move that much because that arc is so far away from where he was standing. It's really hard to estimate where he's going to land. So a lot of 2D platformers will really heighten the character's like weight and sort of density so that when he jumps in the air and you hold down on the right or left arrow, he only moves over about like one square in the overall grid. And I think doing some of that tweaking would really improve just the feeling of doing this kind of jumping sequence up here, which, as somebody that's played a lot of Hollow Knight, you know, this should be trivially easy for me to navigate, and it's not. And I've seen other people play it, and just getting on that square is really, really hard because of the air handling with the character. So one thing I would do to also improve the feel of the game would be to spend a good bit of time just playing with him and seeing if it's possible to adjust the physics of the way the character works, even here in the inspector. I'm going to open that scene actually and just see if I can find the player. You know, I'd start with some of the stuff over here and see what I had at my disposal. And then if these parameters don't give me access to fixing the handling, I would probably delve into the code and see if I could adjust the physics. Yeah. I also think in a game like this, just heading back to the beginning here, I think I can run this, yeah. I also think that there could just be more to do. More enemies, you know. It's a little bit, for whatever reason, running a little jerky for me. No, don't die. Just more stuff to collect. I think I would love to be able to collect hearts so I can renew my health. I'd love more enemies and maybe more projectiles that do less damage, sort of in the spirit of what we were saying about the bullets. Just so there's more going on the screen for me to see than the overall structure of the world, which is actually a pretty nice structure and would work perfectly, I think, as a canvas to put on some more interactions, more visual stimuli, like the stuff you're talking about, Dan, and just making this feel like something we actually have control over when we're navigating it, as opposed to kind of sliding around inside it like it's icy or something. So cool, yeah. And does anything else come to mind for you, Dan, with this one?
I think that was it. One thing I forgot to mention that you just brought up was a way to get back health. I think that's also something you should definitely add.
Yeah, absolutely key. And I recall that we didn't add that basically because we ran out of time on this one. Would have been an easy add, but we sort of decided, you know, we're at the end of the week. This is doing good, and you know, we spent a lot of time getting these enemies to do what they do in this version, and I maintain that I'm really impressed with the work we got done on this.
Yeah, this was a good one.
It was a really good one. A really good effort on the part of David. I almost feel like, you know, if we were going to go back in and work on this menu, you know, we might offer a way of letting people have access to the different levels right off the bat rather than having it all happen in a stream. We could do like an unlocking thing where you start in the forest, and then when you beat the forest, the fire level is unlocked, and then that's reflected into the menu here, so that when you leave the game and come back, you can click on the fire level and start there rather than like, oh my gosh, I have to start at the beginning of the forest, and the platforming in that and that thing is brutal.
Yeah, I think that's a good touch as well.
Awesome. Yeah, so looks like you've been keeping track of this here. Thank you so much. This is perfect. We're talking making the menus more snazzy, visual indication of bullet hitting shield, bullet hitting player. Yep. Excellent. Um, and of course, I'll put this question out to the chat as well. For those of you who just watched that little playthrough, and those of you who worked on the project, of course, we're curious if you have any suggestions or ideas for things that you would love to see in a game like this. I have actually been in touch with Tayshawn, who did a lot of the character art. And of course, Tayshawn is ever productive, and he's working on some pixel art for some variations of characters that he wants to have us include in this game, which might give us potentially the option of, if we wanted to use Tayshawn's art, creating alternate avatars that maybe potentially would even have different abilities. We could also just make it a skin and change avatars based on which one you want to look like. I also see David saying in the chat a run button. Yeah, that would be really nice. Usually we just have hold down on shift to run in many video games, so that's certainly something we could add. Lots to do in a game like this. Let's ask one more question about this one, and then we'll move on to the next project. So Dan, if you were going to pick one of these to focus on first, which one would you pick?
From my experience, the one that has the most impact is this one right here, a visual indication of just everything you do. It makes the game feel more responsive, makes the player feel like their actions actually have impact in the game world. So this is something I would definitely do first. It doesn't actually change the gameplay at all. It just makes the game just feel better to the player, which as a game developer, that's what you want. You want the game to feel good. So this one will have the biggest impact over all the others. Not to say they're any less important. This is just will have the biggest impact that you'll notice right away.
Awesome, excellent. That's really clear and makes total sense to me. Yeah. So one thing I hear when you say that too is, it's tempting to say like, oh, we should make more levels. And of course, if you're doing a beta, it's nice to say I'd like to have 3 levels or 4 levels or 5 levels. But talking about something like this, a visual indication of the bullet hitting the shield, that affects all of the existing levels and makes them all better. So we could kind of call that like a global buff on the quality of the game. And I would always say it's better to do like a global buff rather than like adding on to the end of the game. So, right there with everything. Yeah. Awesome. So let's leave that there because I think that's a really good list. And, if we did something like this, I'll add this just because, we have Tayshawn. I'm going to write improved art. Although that's not really something we need for a beta because when we're in this phase, it's more focused on improving the gameplay. And improving the art is something we can do much later. But I am going to put this on here just because, we have an artist on our team and I know he wants to work. So I'm keeping that on the list as specifically a shout out to Tayshawn as a member of that team. So
I'm also just going to add art for the effects as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, actually, that makes me realize the thing you were saying about like having the enemies die and lay on the ground after you kill them.
Mm-hmm.
That is an art thing. And one thing that I've always felt like it was kind of missing in this game is like when you hit the guys with the sword, they just sort of like blink out of existence. And that's because we didn't actually do art for a death animation.
That would be 2 of these things pretty much, or 3, I guess. There would be indication of you hitting the enemy, then the enemy staying on the floor, then whether or not you want to have a different aspect to them, like being alive to dead. Like obviously they wouldn't just one frame to the next just be dead on the floor,
Right.
unless you just don't have time for that. But I guess that could be a third step, which would be like, oh, maybe have them fly back or something, or you could just make it an animation.
Yeah, so like a take damage, and then like death animation, and then a death. Well, I guess you could just like leave it at the end of the death animation on the floor.
Yeah, it could just be the last, right?
Last frame of the death animation. Yeah, exactly. Awesome. This is great. This is like good marching orders, and it makes me realize, I told Tayshawn, of course, I was like, oh, just work on whatever, and let's do some avatars. But he could do a really effective job for this one by creating some of those animations. So of course we're open to recruiting engineers for this project if any of you guys out there are interested, but don't commit yet because we've got a couple more projects to show you. And the next project is the Return of Ted. And this one, I'm going to run this and play as 2 people because this is a multiplayer game. So it's going to look a little weird, but here it is. So, Dan, I don't remember, you said you've sort of seen this game.
Yeah, I've seen this game. I never played it, though.
Yeah. So it looks a little weird with one person playing it. But the objective of the game here, I'm going to focus on being the dog for a second, is to gather up slices of bread and take them back to your base. So, whoops, where is his base? Gosh, oh, there it is. His base is the tent there. He can only carry 3 at a time, so you'll see if I run over these now, he doesn't pick them up. And then the score of the dog increases to 3. So the cat has 1, drops in 1, and then there's also a kind of fun effect in this game where if you go up to the other person's base and run into it, you can steal bread. So it looks like the cat has 1 bread in there. The dog takes the bread and runs back to space with that bread. So we have a little bit of stealing that's possible, and I'm a little confused by this project. I don't know what happened, but we did have a scene somewhere in here where there was a power-up, and the power-up was a flaming toast that would increase your speed for, I think, 5 or 10 seconds. I don't believe I can put, oh, that's the other thing, I forgot about that. If you run into the other person, the bread, it gets knocked off. So there is some sort of fun gameplay there where if you want to kind of sabotage the other person, you can... Gosh, it's so hard to play 2 at once. I wish I could do networked multiplayer with you, Dan, because then we can play against each other, but yeah. Oh my gosh, Davis says he sees the toast. Where is it? The flaming toast. Oh my gosh, yes. That particle effect is tiny. I'm the one that did that. I remember actually putting that on there. I don't know why I made that, so... Oh, dog wins. Okay. I'm like contemplating that. Now I really want to pick that up. I'll just pretend to be the dog for a minute here. Yeah, and we did have a thing here. That counter at the top is referring to this fence that goes down and lets you out into the whole map. So once that's up, then we get our 2-minute time limit for the level. And I can't think of anything else. Emmy, if you're still there, let us know if there's any other gameplay that I'm missing, demoing here. But, yeah. Let's return to Ted. It's actually a great game. Oh my gosh, there it is. It does exist. Okay. And now, super fast. Da 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 da. So, Dan, tell me what you think of this one. If you were considering taking this to the next level.
Yeah, this one has a lot already, so there's not as much for me to say as the last one, but one thing I would say again, I'm going to say this a lot, I'm assuming going forward, is I'd probably put a particle effect for when you pick something up. Like, particle effects are just super nice. They make the game look really good. They're not that complicated to do either. So I would definitely do that. I'm not sure if there's a sound effect for when you pick it up. If there's not, I would put a sound effect for when you pick up the bread.
Yeah.
When you pick up the fire toast, I think it'd be cool if you also got that particle effects for the duration of you having it, just so you could visually see that you have it, besides just the mechanic of you moving faster.
Yes.
I would also try to put a way to indicate to the player that they are carrying the max capacity, because right now the max capacity is 3, but it looks the same as everything else. Like, the stack is just layered the same. So I would try to put maybe like something else on top of it, just to maybe indicate to the player, it's just like, okay, this is the maximum amount, and you can't carry anymore. It's not anything too crazy, but it's a nice little touch that I think just makes it feel better.
Yes.
As with most of these things, I'm going to say.
Yes.
Maybe a little particle effect that follows with the player. Each of the players would be nice. But besides that, not much else.
Just like
Also,
a little trail.
Yeah, just a little trail thing follows behind.
Love it.
And this is just my own personal thing, but changing the text to text mesh pro.
Oh my gosh. The theme of these casts has been like never use the default Unity text, only use text mesh pro.
I have a thing against it.
He's like, Dan's like, I hate the normal text. Oh my gosh, Dan, I have to tell you, like, I always use the default text, and since I started watching your casts on Wednesdays, like, I've totally converted.
Yeah, because it just like looks blurry. I don't know. I like text mesh pro a lot better.
It does.
It allows you to put a border around it too, which is very nice for when you have conflicting backgrounds.
Yeah.
For you to see the text better through the background to it, or border to it.
It really does seem a lot better. And, I had always been a little bit reluctant to mess with it because I was like, oh, it's more complicated than the regular text and I don't want to deal with complication.
It is more complicated. The only thing to remember is that when you import it, it's text mesh pro UGUI. That's like the only complicated part, is remembering that. Otherwise, all the attributes are pretty much exactly the same as regular text.
Yep. Absolutely. I've actually been enjoying using it because in the game that we made for the challenge, I was like, oh, I'm using text mesh pro because I can't in front of Dan use the regular text. And I was like, this is really easy. It's not as complicated as I thought. And it just looks so much more professional than this. And it's just such a quick fix once you've got your gameplay set up and you're doing those little optimizations to make it feel better. So.
Yeah, and one thing I also forgot was, I know you said it before that, actually I guess the flaming toast was it. I think there should just be more to do besides just pick up the toast. Like a way to interact with the other player besides walking into them. Because obviously that does have an effect. But since this is a somewhat competitive game, I think there should be some sort of player-to-player interaction that's encouraged.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I've always thought would be fun with this one is if you had the option to shoot toast at the other person.
That could be cool. It uses one of your toasts, but it'll deplete all the other toasts from the other player.
Yes, exactly. Like, maybe what would happen is if you click, the bottom toast, like, shoots forward, and if you hit the other player, they experience the knockback effect that we already have that knocks all the toast off. That would be really fun.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah. The other thing that I've long wanted to do with this one, again, adding on to everything you've said, when we worked on this, and we worked on this before the Elementals team was part of our studio. Emmy and Madison put this together, and it was really brilliant. Like, some of the original members of our studio working on a game like this, and one thing I think is so strong about it is the consistency and completeness of the level design is just so emblematic of Emmy's talent as a level builder and overall as just a great game designer. And at the time, one of the things that we were all kind of trying to figure out, and this is myself included, is we know how to build really good levels, but how do we rig the player up to feel satisfying to use as a means to interact with that level? And I was talking about this in Elementals too, where I'm like so picky about how it feels to be in the game as the avatar. So if like the air handling feels off, I'm like hypersensitive to it. And in this one, we struggled with getting the camera follow and the dynamic of controlling the player avatars to feel fun. And this solution, I believe the camera is a child of the player, and it just rotates exactly along with rotating the player left and right when you hit the arrows. And what I would love to do to make this game feel more fun to control is set it up to use controller input so that people can sit comfortably and play the game instead of both having to press keys on the keyboard and kind of lean in like this. And then set this up using the third-person avatar rig that we have now, where on the controller you'd be able to use the left thumbstick to control the character, and then the right thumbstick to independently move the camera and look in whatever direction you want. With the avatar then sort of automatically turning and moving in the direction that the camera is pointed, which is how the 3D avatar functions that I have in Pandemic Konami and the updated cat and camera rig that I've been distributing around in April. So I think using something like that would just make it really fun to play. Just even this version. It would feel a little bit more like a real video game instead of a prototype. And, echo effects. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I guarantee there's some kind of audio feedback situation going on. And that is what that comment is coming from. But yeah, controller support and a better camera setup for me would be my big pick for Return of Ted. Anything else that comes to mind while I was talking about that, Dan?
Nothing I could think of.
Yeah. I'm gonna look at the record of what we've been talking about here. Yes. We want particle effects. We want more interaction. The Text Mesh Pro. And we want the fire particle effect to go onto the player. I honestly almost think that I remember trying to get that to happen in this prototype. And I don't know why it doesn't show up, because I once had a scene where there was flames coming out of the dog. But it doesn't, you definitely don't see it in this. So
Maybe it's like inside of the model, so you don't see it.
I think that's probably what's happening. I think that particle effect is too small and may have gotten resized in the prefab so that it doesn't really show up anywhere. With this one we could also, we could say, hey, let's do some menu work here. There is a menu in this. I actually should have shown a menu. This is a really funny menu that we made way back in the day. It just has them there. And, this is a classic example. With Dan on the team, right? Like, I just feel like we could go to town on this and just make a really fun, I don't know, experience.
I like this man.
Yeah. Hold on. This has I don't know, Dan, I don't know if you hear this, but
I don't.
Okay. This one has background music in the previous one I was playing didn't. So let me try collecting that toast for a second.
Oh, yeah, okay. This sound on.
Yeah. There was some really great audio design on this too. It's really a great game. Basically a beta already. So what we're talking here is definitely more in the direction of like, if you really wanted to release this on Edge and like have people like it, there's just a few little things you do to really make it even more of a portfolio game. There it is. What? Oh, right, because I already have the game. Hold on. Apparently the particle effect just stays there. It's just stuck on the ground. Oh my goodness. So some work to do there. The other thing that I thought for this one that would involve maybe a little bit more work to, instead of having the toast statically placed in a level, to do toast spawners. So that it's not always just this exact same grid, but we have some variation in when they come up, which would naturally create more interaction between the players, because if there's like a mix of different areas where there's toast to collect, then at times we're going to both run towards the same area to try to get a clump of toast. And then we'll get into the behavior of running into each other or shooting at each other if we did toast shooting. And that would create a little bit more interaction and texture to the gameplay. Whereas now it's a little bit more like you could actually do a friendly version of this game where you just like all collect all the toast together, and that's the game. But in a game like this, I always feel like you want to encourage people to get saucy and try to hit the other person, because those interactions are what makes a multiplayer kind of cartoonish games like this really fun. So that is what I would do. So you said you like this menu, huh?
Yeah, I do.
All right.
See, one subtle thing about this menu that I do want to point out is that it has movement to it.
Yeah.
Like, even if you don't do anything, it's still movement.
Yep.
Like, obviously it's not a ton of movement, but you don't need a ton of movement. It's a menu. Just the littlest bit of movement just makes it feel like, just makes it feel way better.
Absolutely. It's like oh, this is a video game, right? Like
yeah, like if those were static, this menu would not be the same.
Yeah.
I don't think.
Absolutely. It makes you want to play a bunch of games and just open the menu at the beginning. You know, like what's moving on it, but it always has moving stuff. So, yes. Of course, not text mesh but All right. So lots of ideas for Return of Ted. A really good game that's like probably one of our most complete games we've ever done in the studio. And I'm always just so proud of it. And looking at this list, I can see Emmy releasing this, with credit to Madison, and really having a great game out there that people might even. Like on it, you can get donations. I can see donations coming for this one. It's awesome. All right. So before I move on, of course, just checking in with you guys out there in the chat. Especially since Emmy is there, if you guys have other things, Emmy, if you were to return to this game, I'm curious if there's anything else that you, given sufficient time, would love to add on in Return of Ted besides the things we've said. I'd be, interested in focusing on things, of course, the original developer would want to include. So let us know if you have thoughts about that, Emmy. And then while we're waiting to see if Emmy has any input, I'll ask my same question to you, Dan, which is, which thing would you do first?
Which would I do first? There's two different perspectives I would do for this one, because I think this one's already more polished than the other one, so I'm going to be less nitpicky. But because the game already looks really good, so I'm not going to prioritize visual effects. But so I would say, like, incentives to have player-to-player interaction and different ways to interact with the other player, I think would be the most important thing. Because right now it's just like there's toast everywhere, bread everywhere, and you don't really have to even see the other player to do your task. I think if it was a bit more competitive, so there was a challenge to actually picking up the bread, that could add a lot to it. Because right now there's no challenge, it's just, there's bread on the floor, I just gotta get it faster than the other person, which in its own way is fine, but I think it would be much better if there was some incentive to interact with the other player. So there would also be the mechanics going along with that, such as shooting toast at the other player. But if you don't want to do that, again, the other thing I would say is I think this would just be really nice because picking up toast is the main point of the game. So if you're picking up toast feels good with nice visuals, I think the game would just feel better overall. So it depends what you want to do.
Cool. And I see Emmy's contributing in the chat, I think cleaning up some of the scene because it's kind of a floating plane. Yup. You know,
yeah, I think that would also be good.
I agree with that. Yep. Just like maybe you know, one thing you can do is you can kind of, and we need to do this actually in Pandemic Konami too, because that's like a floating plane situation. Like create something around the actual area.
Oh yeah, I actually added some stuff.
Great.
It's not a ton, but I could add
Put
more.
some stuff around the outside.
Yeah. Yesterday I added a few, but
Awesome. Yeah. Well, that's the third one I'm going to show, so we'll get to check that out. And maybe you have some ideas towards like how to surround. Did you do anything? Like, were you just placing 3D objects, or did you have a specific strategy to?
No, yeah, I didn't add a terrain to like do custom thing. I just took some trees and rocks and water and just put it around the area just to make it feel more closed in, and also added a slightly elevated plane surrounding it, so you just can't look off the edge.
Yep. Let's actually hop over to that one, and we'll take a look at that before we start playing, because I think that you know that's a whole thing in and of itself. You know, if you like environment design, there are all these like tricks like that where you can make it look like this textured location that you're in, and also not add an immense amount of computational load in creating the level. You know, because of course one of the risks that you're like, oh, I'm gonna like build that whole city, and then like loading the game's like 20 minutes.
Yeah, speaking to Emmy, if you were to do the same thing, I would recommend, because I'm pretty sure some of the stuff you have has colliders on it, or mesh colliders. If you're going to surround the area that the player can't interact with stuff, I would just make sure you take your mesh renderers off, because just having collisions in the environment will slow down your game. So if you're never going to be able to interact with them, you could just take it off.
Yeah, another thing I was thinking when I was playing this was in a scene like this, it's not really necessary to put colliders on stuff like this. You know, this bush. I mean, it's sort of like okay, it's an obstacle, and part of what we want to do is create this kind of an obstacle course. But I don't know. Like, I almost would just have the obstacles be trees, and then everything be smaller plants, more decorative. But like, you can make decisions like that, and the point I'm saying is like every one of those, you know, if that has a mesh collider on it, you're adding to the load. And there are many things in video games that people can walk through. So you can make choices like that. You know, like this over here, you could put one box collider around the house, you know, and that would help. But that's like a whole deep dive on like really doing good environment design. So only if you want to go there. All right. So we don't have a lot of time, and I did want to check out Pandemic Konami, which is the last one I was going to show you guys. And of course, this is the game that Dan and I worked on in April. I came up with the initial idea. Dan did a lot of the engineering and just making it work well. I'll just run it, and you know, part of what I also am checking out right now is the fact that Dan, you've done some work on this game since I last saw it. So you said that there's stuff out there in the distance, so it's not just like a plane.
Yeah, I just added a few stuff around. I tried to put something to like block where the sidewalk is, so that it doesn't look like you can walk out there. I made the controller just slightly more snappy, and also added what's it called? material on all the stuff, so you don't stick to them as much.
Nice.
And as you approach an enemy, it'll give you a visual indication that you're within their range.
Yeah, that's a really great add. All of those are really like subtle things, but just the fact that you can see when you're in range of a zombie like that, it just makes it so much more fun.
Yeah, and then it also serves as a mechanical function. Not mechanical, I guess gameplay, I guess. Because it's like, okay, I'm currently being affected by this, and you could actually see that you're being affected by it. Like, this one is less of a polish change, it's more, I think this is like an essential part to that feature. Because if you can't see it, the player doesn't really understand what's happening.
Exactly. Yeah, and you have this number in the upper right that's indicating that, but like...
Yeah, but they might not, like, yeah, they're focusing on the main screen.
Exactly. And the other thing is, there's a passive stress increase that happens when you don't hear a zombie, so it's further confusing like what increases your stress. So you're definitely clarifying that one of the ways that increases it is if you go near these guys. And you can also correlate that with the fact that this sound stress increases goes up a lot. This is looking really good. I'm just like so impressed with that change. It really just ups the feeling of fun and understanding how the game runs. And you're surrounded with it. So thank you for adding that. I'm gonna die. This game, man, I made it really hard, you know. And one thing I was thinking about actually, I'm probably gonna make a video about this for YouTube. But when I was working on a little bit of a design push for this game, I was thinking about like what stress you should start at. And you have to start with a fair amount of stress, or there's no reason to run around do anything. Because you'll just win the moment you click on flowers. So here I'll give an example of this. You know, this is really my favorite aspect of game design and development, and thinking about numbers in this way. But like, I have 3 stress. Now what am I supposed to do? I know if I click on the flower, I'll win. So like, I guess I'll flip the bench. You know, when I come in with 60, I'm like, oh god, you know. That's bad. So I turned it up really high because I wanted people to come in. I wanted people to come in and actually be like, oh my god, this is really a bad situation. But I think I made it too hard. It's the ultimate truth of the matter. Like, you know, I don't know if something like 20 would be better, but my sense has gone with this that I need to do a little bit more testing and figure out what are things that are meaningful for how much stress you have to start playing. But Dan, tell me what your thoughts are. Now that you've brought it to this point, was this really nice?
Can you say that again?
Yep.
I'm not sure if it's just the same, that's hard to hear, but...
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
A little bit better.
A little bit. I'm curious if you have other thoughts on where you would want to take this game next.
So, thoughts about the things to add?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. So one thing I think we could definitely add to this game is more to do. Right now the only thing in the game is avoiding zombies and going to the flowers and clicking on them. I think it would be cool if there were different things we could add to just change up the gameplay besides the loop we have going here. Or different things to affect the player, such as like power-ups or whatever. I know last week we were talking about like I forget what it's called, just a mask that you can pick up, and then that would decrease, or just make you impervious to the zombies for a brief amount of time while you have the mask on. Just some small stuff, like just different things to do. Right now the gameplay loop is pretty repetitive.
Yep. Absolutely. I think some things to just change up your interactions with zombies would be a place to start. Like, if I'm impervious to them for a long time, I can just run around here like the invincible mode in Mario, and just like click, right, instead of my very surreptitious, sneaky way that I use now. But then some other like a power up or an item or something to do like a mass to try to collect like
or just different ways to decrease stress. I'm not sure off the top of my head what that would be, but just something else besides sniffing the flowers, just add gameplay variance to it.
Definitely. I know. I almost like I don't think we should really do this, but I was definitely having a thought about like what if we had a thing kind of like a David's game where you can check your phone, and there are like different articles, and some of the articles on the phone like increase your stress, and then other ones decrease, and it's like randomly generated because that's really how it is. You check your phone, but like. I also feel like I was feeling David's idea because I definitely would have never thought of the idea of putting up like a cell phone UI in a game if I had used it for home. So. But yeah, we'll have to think of something. And of course, like I'm curious, you guys out there, we're close to 5 and wrap up in a few minutes. But if you guys have suggestions for this one, what else we could. What can we do in this game? What is going to make this a less repetitive gameplay loop? If you guys have ideas, David and anyone else who's out there watching, let us know. Because I think we're going to work on this one a little bit in May.
David said a hard mode.
Hard mode. Yeah.
Could you go more on what you would say a hard mode is? Is it as simple as just adding more enemies, or do you have a different idea as to what you think the hard mode should be?
You could create different kinds of zombies, like...
Yeah, it could be cool.
What if we had one zombie that actually does have coronavirus? Like a red zombie? And then there would be this thing of like these people don't actually have it. It just stresses you out when you hear them. But then like there could be a red zombie where like you don't hear them, then you get sick. That would be interesting to know. We might end up adding a stat. Because I put it all in one stat. Like maybe stress bar. Maybe we would want to expand that too. This game is really hard to win though. It's like weirdly like it has like balancing aspect to it. So yeah, dude, let us know what you mean by hard mode. We're all ears for this because playtesting and giving feedback is what we're about. I'm really impressed with your changes, and thank you for adding those. Just so like honestly, of course, because this is me. I love the like visual effects, like getting them so cool. But I totally and completely noticed number one that material you put on the colliders in the scenes so that I don't stick things. That's so much better.
Yeah.
Like I care so much about that. And now it's like
yeah, because it's sort of hard to avoid the zombies when you're stuck to everything.
It absolutely is. It's just not fun. Like right here. I would come up with this and now it's just funny and love it. Alright, I think David was there. 99 stress. Oh my god. I love it. I think more types is about
yeah, I like that idea too.
I would love to simply design and spread out what would be meaningful as different kinds of tendencies here. And we do have some other 3D characters that we use. In fact, my original intention was that those people.
I mean, I don't think they would fit this style.
Oh, those other people in this one?
Yeah, I mean, I can search for things though. Although one thing you brought up that I think could be a cool idea that we could expand upon was just like maybe getting sick could be something.
Yep.
Like we would have two different meters. There'd be like the sick meter and the stress meter.
Yep. Yeah, that would be interesting because, like, I feel like if you had a sick meter, what you would do there is you would have a chance of getting sick every time a zombie gets near. And you always get stressed out when a zombie comes near. So you'd have like two different dynamics as far as the bad things that can happen to you when you go to the park. But I like the idea of that. It would be fun to do thinking about like what would make sense.
I don't know. Maybe with the like they both go up, but the sick meter would go up maybe slightly less. But the sick meter starts at 0, but it never goes down. So it sort of adds an end point to the game. Whereas if you're good enough at the game right now, it could just go on infinitely. Whereas the sick meter, if it never goes down, eventually you'll mess up enough times for it to be over.
That's a really good idea. So it's like how much peace of mind can you get in before you inevitably get sick with coronavirus?
Yeah.
That's dark, man. I like it.
Or going along with the different zombie types, maybe one zombie type increases your sick meter because they're actually sick, while the others are just you being paranoid over, like, are they sick or not? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Something like that. I love that idea. I feel like it needs another stat. It's like been too hyper compressed by me because I'm obsessed with like elegant game systems. I'm like, let's not have it all be one number, but then we can expand it back out and have there be two stats and be like,
yeah, I think we can still keep it simple too.
Yeah. I love it. I'm excited about this one. I think it's kind of funny. Like it has kind of like contrast between like it's a I feel like we should make it like more and more depressing because it's so cartoonish. like the music's like la la, and it's like this horrible. So I'm gonna just take a look at this and last chance to give us any input on this one. David has suggested a hard mode, which definitely is something we could include. We could definitely do. We were talking about this before, but we had the idea of doing options beginning to set up how much stress you start out with. So David's suggestion of a hard mode definitely plays in with that. And maybe expanding out and creating a second meter, second stat that we could work with to create that texture and more different things we could do. Power-ups. We talked about getting a mask, which would be, I think, cute and relevant. And of course, we'll finish this one with our final question of which one would you do first?
Oh, which one would we do first? I mean, I think. Okay, wait. Just put this. Well, I guess these are the same, whatever. Okay, like these two coincide with each other. I think these two would be the most important because right now the gameplay loop I feel is a bit too repetitive.
Yep.
So these two things both diversify that in a similar but like cohesive way.
Yep.
So I think this would be first. Hard difficulty could be like a nice stretch goal.
Yep.
And I guess this also just adds gameplay variance by default, so it would also tick this box off.
Yep.
So yeah, it would be like, I know this is 3 things, but this is I would do first.
3 things beginning. No pressure. No, but that's a really good point. And one of the things we can observe about this one is, we have the benefit in this one, just from the perspective of this conversation that. On the other ones, we had more particle effects and add more interactions that make it satisfying. And in this game, because you worked on it, we're lucky that we have a lot of nice effects like that. Like we have the particle effect shooting up out of the flowers, and we have that nice thing you created where when you get near the zombie, it closes in on the screen, and then it gives us a focus on another aspect of the game that we could move forward with. And I just don't want it to sound like we're being like, oh, like the other one sucked because they didn't have particle effects. It's just a matter always of like, what did your personality cause you to focus on?
Yeah, and then it's also to mention, we still have particle effects or things to spice up the visuals that we can do. It's not like it's perfect as it is right now.
Yeah. Seems like we could do a lot, honestly, a lot more to spice it up.
Yeah.
I think in the case of this one, I'd want to add that gameplay texturing and then spice that up and then spice everything up too. Like we need a little of everything to really make this one sing, I think. But one thing I think that's cool about our collaboration is you and I are not really like level design focused.
Yeah.
And you can tell from the game, like we were not like, oh my god, let's make this huge level. And it's a contrast to some of the other people in our studio. In fact, the people who've been chatting with us today, David and Emmy, are both really level design focused and are brilliant in a way that I am not in creating like physical environments. So like one thing I want to recognize about the previous two games is there is just a really high degree of focus on making the physical environment interesting. And David's effort on elementals is incredible. It's hard to get there because the platforming is hard. And Return of Ted is just gorgeous and cartoonish and has a real logic to the way it's set up. And so that just makes them different games and cool in their own way. And they have aspects of them that really are perfect and lovely without any of this improvement. So I was like to say that because I can be really nitpicky too, right? Like we're both sitting here, this is messed up,
Yeah.
But nitpicking is not about saying the game sucks and isn't good enough. It's about being like...
Yeah, because, like I think both of the projects are already super good. Again, like the point of what we're doing this month is we're trying to polish the game. So that's why we're being nitpicky, is because there's nothing like huge to really comment about, because you've already succeeded in doing all the hard things. It's just the little small visual touches that we want to add to it.
Exactly. It's like if you had to critique a house, it's very different to critique like, well, you need to build the second floor versus maybe the paint could be a different color, right? So we're at that stage with these, and I'm really excited about this. I don't want to go on for too much longer, but what I was thinking is if people are interested out there right now, I would love to just say I'm actively recruiting for people who want to work on elementals. So if you are interested in joining this team again and contributing to some of this effort to improve this game and get it to a beta, let me know. You can chat me on the cast, you can chat on Dan's cast and just let him know. Maybe we'll be talking heads on these casts more, so we'll both be there. But let us know if you want to join in to work on some of this. If you love this game and you want to make it better. Because you can do that. And most of the people who did this project originally should be able to download it and work on it again. For Return of Ted, this project belongs, I think, primarily to Emmy. And so to Emmy, I would say, if you're interested in working on this game and doing some of these improvements, let me know. I won't really get in there and mess with this one unless I hear from you, Emmy, because this one was less of a team. It was a small game belonging mainly to Emmy and Madison. I would love to work on it, but I don't want to mess with it without Emmy's permission. And won't do any engineering recruitment unless Emmy, you say you want to do it and really polish this thing up so we could put it on itch. So that's how we'll proceed for Return of Ted. And then finally, Hanami, Pandemic Hanami, Dan and I are working on that one. But if you're interested in playtesting it, let us know because I can, I've done it once with the WebGL build on Simmer, so I can easily put you guys on whatever the latest version is, and we're really open to suggestions for how to make this one fun. David just like playtest. Okay. And then the other games that we have that came up in April were, of course, 3 Fortnights at Home, and we'll call this unnamed toilet paper game. So, if you guys want to turn these into something, please do. This I think could use some improvement in and of itself. We've talked about this in our playtesting a couple casts ago. And the unnamed toilet paper game, I think, needs a little more time with the development there to work on UI. So, Emmy, if you're out there, I do want to keep bringing the toilet paper game. She's saying yes.
Yeah, the toilet paper game is good.
I know. That game is so good. I honestly think, like, if I had to pick between the two, I would say do the toilet paper one first. Because I almost feel like if we can get all these games really good, we could create like a whole cluster of these like weird pandemic games. Like we have like David's like horror insanity. We have like pandemic Konami, which like okay, it's also actually kind of similar to Return of Ted in a way where it's like sort of funny and cartoony, but then also like there's some like kind of dark elements to it. And the toilet paper game has that vibe too. It's like, oh my god, what is even happening? Toilet is exploding. So I would say if I had to pick between the two, Emmy, I would say do this one first. I always pick the wrong one. That's the one I wanted. David, I think you could probably do both if you're still listening. Some work on Four Nights at Home, and then if you wanted to play a guest role, a cameo in improving elementals, you would be welcome. But for elementals, I'm working with Tayshawn to get some more art, and I'd love to bring Morale back into the picture and get his expertise in working on UI. Because we all know he's a great UI engineer, and I think he could do some really good work to make that game. Just more inviting, like you said, Dan. So cool. Well, that was a lot, but is there anything else you wanted to say, Dan, before we sign off?
Yeah, one thing I do want to point out is, obviously we talked about these old games, but if you're going to work on the games you're working on already, most of these principles that we brought up with these other games that I pointed out to make it feel better, they apply in almost every game. So I would try to look through this list and see what you could take from it to add to your own game, because the principles are relatively the same. It's just add little touches to make the game feel better. If you're not sure what those are, just look through this list and add it to your project. Even though we don't have specific pointers towards what exactly those things are for your respective games, like I said, the principles are relatively the same. So try to convert what we said here into your own projects.
Yeah, that's such good advice. I'm just thinking now, what are some of the overriding themes? And I think, one of your themes was like, make it feel good to play.
Yeah, another thing is just visual indications of pretty much everything you do. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we also had another thread that came up in Pandemic and in Elementals. Well, actually in all three, which was very the gameplay.
Yeah.
So that was in the case of elementals, I just said I want more stuff to do in here. I want more enemies. I want more collectibles. I just want more bullets. I want more everything. In Return of Ted, we wanted maybe to create toast spawning. And in Pandemic, we wanted Pandemic Konami, we wanted like more interactions, more power-ups, different kinds of zombies. And I think we were like talking about a thing of like going like this, like up and down and up and down, instead of just the same thing constantly. So very deeply. And we talked about that with Three Four Nights at Home, right? Like we were saying, we want lots of different kinds of things to do in there. And I think David actually responded to that really well by like that rabbit comes in. Like.
Yeah.
So. I think these let's leave it at that, right? Make it feel good to play. Visual indications of everything you do. Vary the gameplay. Are three great ones that I feel like sum up a lot of what we just said.
Yeah, I think those are like the main three.
Yeah. Let's see what that gets us. It's of course an evolving process, and you know the engineering Wednesdays will continue where we look at some ways we could actually concretely do that. So we will be back with you to continue to talk about these three things on Wednesday, and hopefully getting some of Dan's hard-earned expertise in doing this. We'll dip into elementals a little bit. We did talk about, even though we won't really dig into Return of Ted until Emmy, such time as Emmy's ready. I did want to talk to you guys about how to add controller support to a game, which is something that we talked about in Return of Ted. So Dan, maybe you'll be able to talk to some folks about that. And we're always talking about varying gameplay. So many ways.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Dan, thanks for being awesome. It was fun to be talking with you on this Twitch cast this afternoon. And we went so long because it was so fun. All right, so guys, be in touch with us and let us know if you have questions. Emmy, I hope you're back, and the unnamed toilet paper game will continue to progress. And we will be back with you at 4 p.m. on Wednesday. Sound good?
Bye-bye.
Dan is like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all. All right. Well, Dan, let's sign off. I'll stop the cast. We'll wave bye, and we'll see you guys in a couple of days. Have a great Tuesday and Wednesday. Bye.
Bye-bye.